Welcome back to Notorious Figures in History. In case you didn't know, I'm your host, Mikey Bobuno. Before we get started on this journey to the past, we ask that you consider subscribing as a token of friendship before we begin our journey. Now get ready for Lullabies from the Underworld, our latest series where the dark echoes of organized crime lull you into the shadows of history.
Thank you, Mikey Babuno, for that wonderful intro as always. Now, let's begin our story. The streets of New York City, a breeding ground for ambition and violence, have whispered many names into infamy. Few, however, have carried the chilling weight of the Gemini Twins, Anthony Center and Joseph Tester. Born just 10 days apart under the same zodiac sign, their names became synonymous with the brutal efficiency of the Gambino crime family. Their lives a testament to the seductive power and devastating consequences of organized crime. This is their story. This is a story of loyalty and betrayal, of ambition and desperation. It's a journey into the dark heart of a bygone era, when the mafia's grip on the city seemed absolute. We will delve into the lives of Anthony Center and Joseph Tester, tracing their rise from street thugs to feared enforcers. We will uncover the secrets of their success and the terrible price they ultimately paid. The 1970s and 80s marked a turbulent period for New York City. The city's streets, once vibrant and full of life, were slowly being consumed by the shadows of organized crime. The Italian mafia, with its intricate hierarchy and ruthless code of silence, held sway over vast swathes of the city's underworld. From the docks to the construction industry, their influence was inescapable. Within this world of shadows and secrets, the Gambino family reigned supreme. Led by the cunning and ruthless Paul Castellano, the family controlled a vast criminal empire. Drugs, extortion, gambling, their tentacles reached into every corner of the city's underbelly. It was in this crucible of violence and corruption that the Gemini Twins, Anthony Center and Joseph Tester, would forge their fearsome reputation. Drawn to the allure of power and wealth, they rose through the ranks with terrifying speed, leaving a trail of blood and fear in their wake. The world of the Mafia was built on violence. It was the currency they understood, the language they spoke. To survive, to thrive, one had to be willing to take a life as easily as taking a breath. Anthony Center and Joseph Tester understood this from a young age. Growing up on the mean streets of Brooklyn, they learned to fight before they could read, their fists becoming extensions of their will. They were drawn to the Gambino family like moths to a flame, eager to prove their loyalty and ruthlessness. Their ambition did not go unnoticed. Roy DeMeo, a rising star in the Gambino family and head of the infamous DeMeo Crew, saw their potential. DeMeo, a man with a chillingly pragmatic approach to violence, took the twins under his wing, molding them into his own image. Under DeMeo's tutelage, the Gemini Twins flourished. They were quick learners, efficient and utterly ruthless in carrying out their orders. Their loyalty to DeMeo was absolute, their bond unbreakable. They rose through the ranks of the DeMeo Crew, earning a reputation for their ruthlessness and efficiency. Word of their exploits spread like wildfire through the underworld. They were feared, respected, and avoided in equal measure. Their names became synonymous with violence, their presence a harbinger of death. The Gemini Twins had arrived, and the New York underworld would never be the same. The story of Anthony Center and Joseph Tester begins not in the shadowy backrooms of social clubs, but amidst the crowded streets and brownstones of Brooklyn, New York. Born just 10 days apart in 1952, the twins shared more than just a birth date. They shared an upbringing steeped in the culture of the Italian-American community, a world where loyalty to family, both blood and chosen, was paramount. Their neighborhood, like many in the borough, was a melting pot of cultures, but the shadow of organized crime loomed large. The Mafia, with its roots in the old country, was an inescapable presence, its influence seeping into every corner of their lives. From the local bakery to the corner bodega, the whispers of made men and wise guys were never far away. For young Anthony and Joseph, these whispers held a dangerous allure. The reach of the Gambino family, one of New York's infamous 5 families, extended far beyond the social clubs and backrooms of Little Italy. It touched the lives of countless individuals, often shaping their destinies in ways both subtle and profound. Anthony and Joseph's family, though not directly involved in criminal activities, found themselves living under the Gambino's long shadow. Perhaps it was an uncle who owed a debt to a local loan shark, or a cousin who found work on a construction site controlled by the mob. Whatever the connection, the twins grew up acutely aware of the power and influence wielded by these men of respect. They saw firsthand how fear and loyalty intertwined, how a single word from a made man could change a life forever. It was a world that both fascinated and frightened them, a world that whispered promises of wealth and power, but at a terrible cost. As the Gemini twins entered their teenage years, the streets of their Red Hook neighborhood became their proving ground. Here, amongst the rumble of the docks and the shadow of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, they learned the art of survival. Petty theft, street fights, and a growing disregard for authority marked their adolescence. Their reputation as tough and uncompromising young men spread through the neighborhood. They were fearless, always ready to fight, and showed a loyalty to each other that bordered on the unnerving. It was this loyalty, this unwavering bond forged in the crucible of their shared experiences, that would become their defining characteristic. It would also be their greatest strength and ultimately their fatal flaw. For young men like Anthony and Joseph, growing up in the shadow of the Mafia, violence was not just a means to an end, it was a language, a currency of respect. They learned to throw a punch before they learned to shave, their fists becoming extensions of their will. They understood the power of intimidation, the fear that flickered in the eyes of someone who knew they were outmatched. Their skills, honed in countless street brawls and back-alley confrontations, did not go unnoticed. Local mobsters, men who made their living through violence, saw potential in the twins. Here were 2 young men, fearless and utterly loyal to each other, who could be molded into valuable assets. It was only a matter of time before they were drawn into the inner circle of organized crime. The world of the Mafia was built on a foundation of blood and loyalty, and entry into its ranks often came at a terrible price. For Anthony Center and Joseph Tester, their initiation into this world would be both swift and brutal. It began with a simple errand, a message to be delivered, a debt to be collected, a seemingly mundane task that would spiral into a night of violence and forever alter the course of their lives. Their target, a low-level associate who had dared to cross the Gambino family, never saw them coming. The twins, barely old enough to shave, moved with a chilling efficiency that belied their youth. The deed was done quickly, brutally, without hesitation. Their baptism by blood was complete. The Gemini twins, fresh from their brutal initiation, were about to embark on a journey that would test their limits and redefine their lives. They had proven their mettle, but the real challenge was just beginning. They found themselves under the watchful eye of Roy DeMeo, a rising captain in the Gambino family. DeMeo was not just any mobster, he was a man whose reputation for ruthlessness and strategic brilliance preceded him. His name struck fear into the hearts of many, and his crew was known for their efficiency and brutality. DeMeo, a man who understood the language of violence better than most, had a keen eye for talent. He could see potential where others saw only raw aggression. The The twins, with their fierce loyalty and unyielding determination, caught his attention immediately. He saw something special in the twins, a raw, untamed brutality that he could mold to his liking. They were like uncut diamonds, rough around the edges, but with the potential to shine brilliantly under the right guidance. DeMeo knew that with the proper training and discipline, they could become invaluable assets to his operations. He recognized their unwavering loyalty to each other, a bond that could be both an asset and a liability in their line of work. In the world of organized crime, trust was a rare commodity, and the twins' bond was something DeMeo could exploit to ensure their loyalty to him and the crew. However, he also knew that their closeness could be a double-edged sword. If one of them were to falter, the other might follow, jeopardizing the entire operation. It was a risk he was willing to take, believing that their strengths far outweighed their potential weaknesses. The DeMeo Crew, known for its ruthlessness and efficiency, operated out of a nondescript storefront in Brooklyn. This unassuming location was the epicenter of their criminal activities, a place where plans were hatched and lives were irrevocably changed. The storefront, with its unremarkable facade, gave no hint of the dark deeds that transpired within. It was a perfect cover, blending seamlessly into the urban landscape of Brooklyn, hiding in plain sight. This place was known as the Gemini Lounge. To outsiders, it was just another bar, but to those in the know, it was the nerve center of the DeMeo Crew's operations. It was here that the twins would learn the intricacies of their new trade. It was an irony not lost on the twins, this place that shared their astrological sign becoming their home away from home. The Gemini Lounge was more than just a base of operations. It was a symbol of their new life, a macabre training ground for their burgeoning careers in organized crime. The twins quickly adapted to their new environment, learning the ropes under DeMeo's watchful eye. They were taught the art of intimidation, the importance of loyalty, and the brutal reality of their chosen path. Every lesson was a step deeper into the dark world they had chosen. DeMeo, a meticulous planner with a penchant for the theatrical, wasted no time in putting his new protégés to work. He believed in learning by doing, and the twins were soon involved in various operations, each more dangerous than the last. Under DeMeo's guidance, the twins honed their skills, becoming more efficient and ruthless with each passing day. They learned to navigate the treacherous waters of organized crime, understanding that survival depended on a delicate balance of fear and respect. The Gemini twins had entered a world where trust was scarce and betrayal was often a matter of life and death. But with DeMeo's mentorship, they were becoming formidable players in the dangerous game of organized crime, ready to carve out their own legacy in the shadows of Brooklyn. Under DeMeo's tutelage, the Gemini twins honed their craft, transforming from street toughs into efficient instruments of the Gambino family. The Gemini Lounge became their classroom, its back rooms echoing with the muffled sounds of violence, its air thick with the stench of fear. DeMeo, a firm believer in hands-on training, often involved the twins in his gruesome handiwork. They learned the art of the quick kill, the importance of leaving no witnesses, the necessity of disposing of bodies with chilling efficiency. The Gemini Method, as it came to be known within the crew, involved a combination of brutality and meticulous planning. Victims, often lured to their deaths, would be dispatched with a terrifying swiftness, their bodies dismembered and disposed of with a chilling practicality. The twins, once inseparable but distinct, began to operate as a single unit, their actions synchronized, their thoughts seemingly in unison. While Anthony Center reveled in the raw violence of their work, Joseph Tester, despite his quiet demeanor, possessed a keen intellect that proved invaluable to the crew. He became DeMeo's trusted driver, responsible for whisking the crew away from crime scenes, navigating the labyrinthine streets of New York with a calmness that belied the chaos they left in their wake. Tester's knowledge of the city's underbelly, its hidden alleys and forgotten shortcuts, proved invaluable time and again. He could anticipate police patrols, vanish into the urban jungle, leaving authorities baffled and frustrated. His ability to remain calm under pressure, to think clearly when others panicked, made him the perfect foil to Center's impulsive nature. Together, they were a formidable team, their contrasting skills complementing each other with deadly efficiency. As the Gemini Twins rose through the ranks of the DeMeo Crew, their reputation for ruthlessness spread throughout the underworld. Their names were whispered in hushed tones, their deeds recounted with a mix of fear and morbid fascination. The body count attributed to the twins, though never officially confirmed, is believed to be staggering. Informants whispered of clandestine meetings at the Gemini Lounge, followed by the disappearance of rivals, debtors, and anyone suspected of disloyalty. The twins, once inseparable but distinct, became interchangeable in the minds of their victims, their identities blurring into a single, terrifying entity, the harbingers of death. Their reign of terror, however, could not last forever. The seeds of their downfall, like the seeds of their success, were sown in the very nature of their bond. As the DeMeo Crew's grip on power tightened, so too did the noose of suspicion and paranoia. The FBI, aware of the crew's activities but lacking the evidence to bring them down, began to apply pressure, leaning on informants, exploiting rivalries, and sowing seeds of distrust within the ranks. Whispers of doubt and betrayal began to circulate within the Gemini Lounge, fueled by fear and ambition. DeMeo, a man who inspired both loyalty and terror in equal measure, became increasingly unpredictable, his paranoia growing with each passing day. He saw enemies everywhere, even among his most trusted lieutenants. The Gemini Twins, once his prized pupils, found themselves walking a tightrope, their every move scrutinized, their loyalty questioned. The world of the Mafia, built on a foundation of loyalty and respect, was crumbling under the weight of its own contradictions. The Gemini Twins, once symbols of unbreakable brotherhood, found themselves caught in a web of suspicion and paranoia, their bond tested like never before. The streets they once ruled had become a battleground, not just with rival gangs and law enforcement, but with the demons that lurked within their own ranks. The walls were closing in, the air thick with the stench of betrayal. The Gemini Twins, once invincible, would soon discover that even the strongest bonds can be broken, that in the world they had chosen, loyalty was a fickle mistress, and even blood ties could not guarantee survival. To understand the world the Gemini Twins inhabited, one must understand the intricate and often brutal hierarchy of the New York Mafia. This was not just a criminal organization, it was a shadow government, a parallel power structure that operated with its own rules, its own justice, and its own brutal efficiency. The Mafia's influence permeated every aspect of life in New York City, from the bustling streets of Manhattan to the quiet residential neighborhoods of Queens and Brooklyn. It was a world where respect was earned through fear, and power was maintained through violence and intimidation. 5 families, each with its own territory, rackets and internal power struggles, held sway over the city's underworld. These families were not just gangs, they were dynasties, each with its own history, traditions and codes of conduct. The Bonanno, Colombo, Gambino, Genovese and Lucchese families, these were the names whispered in hushed tones, their power felt in every corner of the city. Each family controlled different neighborhoods, different businesses, and different aspects of the criminal underworld. They were involved in everything from drug trafficking and extortion to gambling and loan sharking. Their reach extended into legitimate businesses as well, with many companies paying protection money to avoid trouble. The Bonanno, Colombo, Gambino, Genovese and Lucchese families, these were the names whispered in hushed tones, their power felt in every corner of the city. Each family had its own boss, underboss and consigliere, as well as a network of capos, soldiers and associates. The bosses were the kings of their respective domains, ruling with an iron fist and demanding absolute loyalty from their subordinates. The underbosses were the second in command, often handling the day-to-day operations and acting as the boss's right-hand man. The consiglieres were the advisors, offering counsel and mediating disputes within the family. The capos were the lieutenants, each in charge of a crew of soldiers and associates who carried out the family's dirty work. These families, bound by a code of silence known as omerta, operated with a ruthlessness that kept the city in a perpetual state of unease. Omerta was more than just a code of silence, it was a way of life. Breaking omerta was considered the ultimate betrayal, punishable by death. This code ensured that the mafia's secrets remained hidden, and that those who crossed the line paid the ultimate price. The families used fear and intimidation to maintain control, and their reach extended into every corner of the city. They had eyes and ears everywhere, and those who dared to defy them often found themselves facing dire consequences. They infiltrated unions, controlled businesses, and rigged elections, their influence seeping into the very fabric of New York life. The mafia's control over unions allowed them to manipulate labor strikes, extort money from businesses, and ensure that their own members were placed in key positions. They used their influence to rig elections, ensuring that politicians who were sympathetic to their cause were elected to office. This gave them a level of power and control that extended far beyond the criminal underworld. They were able to manipulate the city's economy, control the flow of goods and services, and even influence the decisions of the city's government. Theirs was a world where loyalty was paramount, betrayal punishable by death, and power was measured in blood and money. Loyalty to the family was the most important virtue, and those who betrayed that loyalty were dealt with swiftly and brutally. The mafia's power was built on a foundation of fear and violence, and they used that power to maintain control over their territories. Money was the lifeblood of the organization, and they used it to bribe officials, pay off informants, and fund their criminal enterprises. Blood was the currency of power, and those who sought to challenge the mafia's authority often found themselves on the receiving end of a violent retribution. The Gemini Twins, as members of the Gambino family, found themselves pawns in a much larger game, their fate intertwined with the shifting alliances and bloody rivalries of the five families. The twins were born into a world of violence and crime, and their loyalty to the Gambino family was absolute. They were willing to do whatever it took to protect their family and maintain their position within the organization. But in the world of the mafia, alliances were always shifting, and today's friend could be tomorrow's enemy. The twins had to navigate a complex web of relationships, always aware that one wrong move could lead to their downfall. Their story is a testament to the brutal reality of life within the mafia, where power is fleeting and loyalty is often a matter of life and death. The 1970s and 80s were a turbulent time for New York City. The once vibrant metropolis was grappling with economic decline, social unrest, and a soaring crime rate. The mafia, always quick to exploit chaos, thrived in this environment, their grip on the city tightening as fear and uncertainty spread. The streets became a battleground not just for turf wars between rival gangs, but also for the hearts and minds of everyday New Yorkers. The mafia's influence was pervasive, touching every aspect of life, from the construction industry to the waterfront. They controlled businesses through intimidation, infiltrated labor unions, and corrupted public officials, their tentacles reaching into the very heart of the city's power structure. It was a time when the line between right and wrong blurred, when the allure of quick money and the fear of retribution often silenced those who dared to speak out. At the helm of the Gambino family during this tumultuous period was John Gotti, a man whose charisma and ruthlessness would come to define the era. Known as the Teflon Don for his uncanny ability to evade conviction, Gotti cultivated a public image that was as much celebrity as it was gangster. He embraced the media spotlight, his tailored suits, and confident swagger making him a fixture in the tabloids. Gotti's reign, however, was marked by both ambition and paranoia. He understood the power of image, but he also knew that loyalty within the ranks was a fickle thing. The Gemini Twins, operating under Gotti's leadership, witnessed firsthand the shifting sands of power within the Gambino family. Their loyalty, once unquestioned, became another bargaining chip in Gotti's ruthless pursuit of power. As the 1980s dawned, a new and insidious threat emerged on the streets of New York City: crack cocaine. Cheap, highly addictive, and readily available, crack tore through neighborhoods like a wildfire, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. The Mafia, never ones to miss an opportunity, quickly seized control of this lucrative new market. The violence associated with the drug trade escalated to unprecedented levels as gangs fought for control of street corners and distribution networks. The Gemini Twins, already deeply entrenched in the Gambino family's operations, found themselves thrust into the heart of this brutal new world. Their skills in violence, once honed on the streets, were now employed in a much larger and more chaotic arena. The body count mounted, and the city descended further into a nightmare fueled by addiction and despair. Despite their reign of terror, the days of impunity for the Mafia were numbered. The FBI, under pressure to stem the tide of violence and corruption, stepped up their efforts to dismantle the five families. Informants, once a rarity within the tight-lipped world of the Mafia, began to emerge, their cooperation fueled by fear, ambition, or a desire for revenge. The walls were closing in, not just on the Gemini Twins, but on the entire criminal enterprise they had served. The Teflon Don himself, John Gotti, would eventually fall victim to RICO charges, his reign of power brought to an end by the very organization he had so brazenly defied. The Gemini Twins, once untouchable enforcers for the mob, found themselves facing a future behind bars, their crimes finally catching up with them. The reign of the Gemini Twins, built on a foundation of fear and violence, was destined to crumble. Anthony Center and Joseph Tester, known as the Gemini Twins, were notorious figures in the underworld. Their empire, constructed through ruthless tactics and unyielding brutality, seemed unassailable. But as history has shown time and again, no empire built on such shaky ground can stand forever. The Twins' story is a testament to the inevitable downfall that awaits those who live by the sword. Their world, once seemingly impenetrable, began to unravel as the FBI tightened its grip on the Gambino family. The federal agents, armed with determination and an arsenal of evidence, began to dismantle the intricate web of crime that the Twins had spun. Each document scrutinized, each piece of evidence collected, brought them one step closer to their ultimate goal: bringing the Gemini Twins to justice. Informants, motivated by a mix of fear, ambition, and a desire for revenge, emerged from the shadows, their whispers of betrayal echoing through the hallowed halls of justice. These informants, once loyal to the Twins, now saw an opportunity to save themselves by turning against their former masters. Their testimonies, filled with chilling details of the Twins' operations, became invaluable to the prosecution. The Gemini Method, once whispered in hushed tones, became their undoing. This method, characterized by its meticulous planning and ruthless execution, had once been their greatest strength. But now, it was a double-edged sword. The very precision that had allowed them to rise to power left a trail of evidence that law enforcement could follow. Each crime scene, each victim, was a piece of the puzzle that, once assembled, painted a damning picture of their guilt. The meticulous planning, the cold-blooded efficiency that had defined their rise, left a trail of evidence that proved impossible to erase. Forensic experts, with their keen eyes and advanced technology, uncovered the hidden truths that the Twins had tried so hard to conceal. Each piece of evidence, no matter how small, was a nail in the coffin of their criminal empire. Their victims, silenced in life, found a voice through the tireless efforts of law enforcement. Families who had lost loved ones to the Twins' brutality finally saw a glimmer of hope. The press conferences, the public statements, all served to give a voice to those who could no longer speak for themselves. The relentless pursuit of justice by law enforcement ensured that the victims' stories were heard and their suffering was not in vain. One by one, the charges mounted: murder, racketeering, extortion, a litany of crimes that painted a chilling portrait of their brutal reign. The courtroom became a theatre of justice, where the full extent of the twins' crimes was laid bare for all to see. The judge, the jury, and the public were confronted with the horrifying reality of the twins' actions. Each charge, each piece of evidence, was a step closer to their inevitable downfall. The twins, once inseparable, found themselves facing the consequences of their actions alone, their bond, forged in blood and loyalty, tested in the crucible of justice. As they were led away in handcuffs, the reality of their situation began to sink in. The empire they had built, the power they had wielded, all crumbled to dust. In the end, they were just two men, separated by the bars of justice, facing the consequences of a life lived in the shadows. In 1989, the Gemini twins, Anthony Center and Joseph Testa, were convicted on multiple counts, their reign of terror brought to an end. Sentenced to life imprisonment, they were cast into the unforgiving world of the American penal system. The streets they once ruled, the fear they instilled, became distant memories, replaced by the cold reality of concrete walls and steel bars. Life behind bars offered little opportunity for reflection or redemption. The twins, once feared enforcers, were now just numbers in a system designed to punish and isolate. Their days were marked by monotony, their nights haunted by the ghosts of their past. The bond they shared, once unbreakable, strained under the weight of their shared history. The silence between them speaking volumes about the darkness they had embraced. The legacy of the Gemini twins is a stark reminder of the seductive power and ultimately destructive nature of organized crime. Their story, though rooted in a specific time and place, transcends the confines of their era, serving as a cautionary tale about the allure of power, the corrosive influence of greed, and the devastating consequences of choosing violence as a way of life. Their names, once whispered in fear and awe, now evoke a sense of sorrow and a chilling reminder of the human capacity for brutality. The streets they once terrorized have long since moved on, but the scars of their violence remain, etched into the collective memory of a city forever marked by the shadow of the Mafia. The world inhabited by the Gemini twins, a world of shadowy backrooms, whispered threats, and brutal retribution, has largely faded into the annals of history. The Mafia, once a seemingly invincible force, has been weakened by years of relentless law enforcement pressure, internal strife, and a changing social landscape. The Gemini Lounge, once a hub of criminal activity, is now just another forgotten address, its legacy a footnote in the bloody history of the American Mafia. The story of Anthony Center and Joseph Testa, however, serves as a stark reminder that the allure of power, the seductive whisper of easy money, and the intoxicating thrill of violence continue to hold sway. A cautionary tale for a new generation, tempted by the dark side of the American dream. If you enjoyed this journey, stay tuned for Chapter 2 of this Mafia audio tale as we dive into the story of the DeCavalcante crime family and the North Jersey mob. Let's begin. The DeCavalcante crime family, the North Jersey Mafia. They were the real deal, not just a story. These guys operated in the shadows. They lived by their own code. Loyalty, violence, silence. They were different from the flashy New York families. The DeCavalcantes were quieter, more discreet. But don't let that fool you. They were just as ruthless, just as powerful. Their reach extended far. They controlled unions. They ran gambling rackets. They even dipped their toes into legitimate businesses. Their grip on New Jersey was ironclad. Their influence stretched from the docks of Newark to the suburbs. They were the unseen force, shaping the landscape of the Garden State. This is their story. New Jersey in the early 1900s, a melting pot of immigrants, all chasing the American dream, but for many that dream turned into a nightmare. Poverty, unemployment, desperation filled the streets. It was the perfect breeding ground for organized crime. The DeCavalcante family rose from these ashes. They preyed on the vulnerable, they offered protection, but at a price. They were like a parasite, feeding off the fear and uncertainty of the time. They started small, petty crimes, bootlegging, but their ambition grew. They wanted more power, money, respect, and they were willing to do whatever it took to get it. Their roots ran deep, back to the old country, Sicily. The DeCavalcantes brought their traditions with them, the code of silence, omerta, loyalty to the family above all else. They operated in the shadows, always one step ahead of the law. They had their own rules, their own language. They were a brotherhood, bound by blood and loyalty, but also by fear. Betrayal was punishable by death. They used violence to maintain control, intimidation, extortion, murder. They were masters of their craft. Cold, calculating, they knew how to instill fear. Their influence seeped into every corner of New Jersey. They controlled the construction industry, labor unions. They had their fingers in everything, from garbage disposal to waterfront operations. They built their empire on blood and concrete, leaving a trail of victims in their wake. But their reign wouldn't last forever. The feds were closing in, informants were turning, the walls were starting to crumble. The story of the DeCavalcante crime family is a cautionary tale, a reminder of the seductive power of greed and the devastating consequences of organized crime. The streets of New Jersey were paved with opportunity, not the legal kind. Prohibition had gripped the nation, and with it a thirst for forbidden liquor. The DeCavalcantes saw their chance. They dove headfirst into the booming bootleg trade. They were cunning, resourceful. They built secret distilleries, ran elaborate smuggling rings, and turned ordinary trucks into mobile speakeasies. The money poured in. It was a time of lawlessness, and the DeCavalcantes thrived in the chaos. Their network grew. They had cops on their payroll, judges in their pocket. They were untouchable. Their bootlegging empire stretched from the back alleys of Newark to the glitzy clubs of Manhattan. They were the kings of the underworld, and their reign was just beginning. But power never comes without a price. New Jersey was a crowded jungle. Other gangs wanted their piece of the pie. The DeCavalcantes found themselves locked in bloody turf wars. They fought tooth and nail for every street corner, every speakeasy, every drop of illegal liquor. Rival gangs clashed in broad daylight. Shootouts erupted in crowded streets. The body count rose. The DeCavalcantes, known for their ruthlessness, gave as good as they got. They were not afraid to use violence to protect what they believed was theirs. These were not just petty squabbles. These were battles for control of a lucrative empire. And the DeCavalcantes, with their strict code of loyalty and their willingness to shed blood, emerged as a force to be reckoned with. They were not just surviving, they were conquering. Prohibition couldn't last forever. The feds were cracking down, public opinion was shifting, the writing was on the wall. The DeCavalcantes, always thinking ahead, knew they needed to adapt. They couldn't rely on bootlegging forever. They needed new avenues for profit, new ways to maintain their grip on power. They turned their attention to other vices: gambling, loan sharking, extortion. They infiltrated labor unions, they muscled their way into legitimate businesses. Their tentacles reached further and further, squeezing the life out of the city. They were evolving from a gang of bootleggers into a sophisticated criminal enterprise. They were learning to operate in both the shadows and the light. And with each passing year, their power and influence only grew stronger. But even as the DeCavalcantes prospered, cracks began to appear. Internal strife, power struggles, the family was not immune to the corrosive effects of greed and ambition. Factions formed, loyalties were tested, the seeds of betrayal were sown, whispers of dissent echoed through the ranks. Old scores resurfaced. The once unbreakable bond of family began to fray. It was a dangerous time to be a DeCavalcante. The enemy could be the man sitting next to you. Trust was a luxury few could afford. The struggle for power was a dangerous game, and the stakes were higher than ever. One wrong move could mean the difference between life and death. The family was teetering on the brink, and the coming storm threatened to tear them apart. From the ashes of this internal strife, a new leader emerged. Simone DeCavalcante, a shrewd strategist, a ruthless operator. He understood the changing landscape of organized crime. He knew that to survive, the family needed to adapt and evolve. Simone consolidated his power. He ruthlessly eliminated his rivals. He enforced a strict code of conduct. He understood the importance of discretion, of operating in the shadows. Under his leadership, the DeCavalcantes entered a new era. They diversified their criminal portfolio, moving away from the violence of the past. They invested in legitimate businesses, construction, real estate, garbage disposal. They cultivated relationships with corrupt politicians and union officials. Simone was transforming the DeCavalcantes into a modern criminal empire, a silent partner in the American dream. Simone DeCavalcante, the quiet Don. Unlike the flamboyant mob bosses of Hollywood, Simone preferred discretion. He understood the power of anonymity. He knew that true power resided in the shadows. He rarely raised his voice. His mere presence commanded respect, fear, obedience. Under Simone's leadership, the DeCavalcantes reached the zenith of their power. They became known as the most organized crime family in America. Their influence stretched from the bustling ports of New Jersey to the glittering casinos of Atlantic City. They were a silent empire, their tentacles reaching into every facet of society. They controlled labor unions, they manipulated the construction industry, they skimmed profits from casinos and nightclubs. They were the unseen hand guiding the destiny of New Jersey. And at the heart of it all stood Simone, the mastermind, the strategist, the quiet Don. Section 2. Labor Racketeering. One of the DeCavalcantes' most lucrative enterprises was labor racketeering. They infiltrated labor unions throughout New Jersey. They controlled who got hired, who got promoted, who got paid. They used their influence to extort businesses, threatening strikes, violence, anything to line their pockets. Construction sites became their personal piggy banks. They demanded kickbacks from contractors. They rigged bids. They inflated costs, all under the guise of union protection. Those who refused to play by their rules paid the price. Their businesses vandalized, their lives threatened. The DeCavalcantes' grip on the construction industry was ironclad. They controlled everything from concrete to carpentry. They built their empire on the backs of honest workers, exploiting their labor, stealing their futures, and all the while, Simone DeCavalcante orchestrated from the shadows. The quiet Don, always one step ahead. Section 3. The Concrete Club. The Concrete Club became synonymous with the DeCavalcante family's dominance in construction. They controlled every aspect of the concrete industry in New York City and New Jersey, from the production plants to the delivery trucks. No concrete was poured without their say-so. They used this control to manipulate prices, to extort contractors, to line their pockets with millions of dollars. They held the city hostage, literally holding its growth and development in their hands. The Concrete Club became a symbol of their power, a reminder that they were the true architects of the city's landscape, but their control came at a cost. The inflated prices of concrete drove up construction costs, hurting businesses, taxpayers. The DeCavalcantes' greed knew no bounds. They were willing to sacrifice the city's well-being for their own enrichment. And at the helm of this corrupt enterprise stood Simone DeCavalcante, the quiet Don, pulling the strings from the shadows. Section 4. Gambling and Vice. The DeCavalcante's criminal empire extended far beyond construction. They ran illegal gambling operations throughout New Jersey, backroom card games, loan sharking, numbers running. They preyed on people's vices, their desperation, their desire for a quick fortune. They were masters of deception, rigging games, threatening debtors. They used violence and intimidation to maintain control. Their enforcers were a constant presence, a reminder that debts had to be paid, no matter the cost. The rise of Atlantic City as a gambling mecca only increased their profits. They infiltrated casinos, skimmed money from slot machines, laundered dirty money through legitimate businesses. The DeCavalcantes were experts at turning vice into profit. And Simone DeCavalcante, the quiet Don, he oversaw it all, ensuring the family's grip on the city's underworld remained unchallenged. The DeCavalcante crime family was more than just a business. It was a family, bound by blood, loyalty, a shared history. Simone DeCavalcante understood the importance of family. He relied on trusted relatives to run his operations, his brother, his nephews, his cousins. They were his inner circle, his confidants. They shared in the wealth, the power, but also the danger. Loyalty was paramount. Betrayal was unthinkable, the consequences swift and brutal. The family bond was both a strength and a weakness. It made them stronger, more resilient, but it also made them vulnerable. The feds knew that to bring down the DeCavalcantes, they had to exploit their family ties, turn brother against brother, son against father. It was only a matter of time before the walls of loyalty began to crumble. Despite their outward success, the DeCavalcantes operated under a constant shadow of suspicion. The FBI had been watching them for years, building cases, developing informants, waiting for the right moment to strike. They infiltrated their ranks, planted bugs, intercepted phone calls. The walls were closing in. Simone DeCavalcante, always cautious, always vigilant, smelled danger in the air. He knew the feds were getting closer. The family's grip on power was beginning to loosen. Informants were turning, testifying against their former comrades. The code of silence was cracking. The quiet Don's reign was coming to an end. Within the DeCavalcante family, a storm was brewing. A faction led by the volatile Gallow brothers, Joe, Larry and Albert, grew restless. They chafed under Simone's leadership. They craved power, respect, and they weren't afraid to use violence to get it. The Gallows were a different breed, brash, unpredictable. They disregarded the traditional rules of the Mafia. They flaunted their wealth, courted publicity. Their actions embarrassed Simone, threatened to destabilize the entire family. The tension between the Gallows and Simone's loyalists escalated. Threats were exchanged, lines were drawn. New Jersey's underworld braced itself for a war that would pit brother against brother, family against family, and leave a trail of blood on the streets. The Gallow brothers made the first move. They attempted to assassinate Simone DeCavalcante, a brazen attack that shattered the facade of unity within the family. Simone, though shaken, survived. The gloves were off. The DeCavalcante family was at war with itself. New Jersey descended into chaos. Shootings erupted in broad daylight. Bodies turned up in alleyways and car trunks. The Gallows, fueled by rage and ambition, unleashed a reign of terror. They wanted control of the family's lucrative rackets, and they were willing to pay any price to get it. The streets ran red with the blood of mobsters, innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire. The violence escalated with each passing day. The police seemed powerless to stop it. The DeCavalcante family, once a symbol of order in the underworld, was tearing itself apart from the inside. The Gallow brothers, despite their ruthlessness, underestimated Simone's resolve. He was a master strategist, a cunning tactician. He knew how to exploit his enemy's weaknesses. He used their recklessness against them, turning their allies against them, isolating them. Simone unleashed his own brand of violence, targeted assassinations, brutal reprisals. He sent a message. Betrayal would not be tolerated. The family would be reunited under his control, or it would be destroyed. The body count continued to rise, each death fueling the cycle of violence. The Gallow brothers, once a formidable force, found themselves on the run, hunted by both the law and their former comrades, their grip on power slipping away with every passing day. One by one, the Gallow brothers fell. Larry Gallow gunned down in a Brooklyn restaurant. Albert Gallow ambushed outside a Little Italy eatery. Their reign of terror was over. But the price of their defiance was steep. The DeCavalcante family lay in ruins, its reputation shattered, its ranks decimated. Joe Gallo, the last surviving brother, was eventually captured and imprisoned. His dreams of power lay in tatters. He had become a liability to the family, a constant reminder of their internal strife. His days were numbered. In 1972, Joe Gallo was released from prison. He returned to a changed underworld. The DeCavalcante family was a shadow of its former self. Simone DeCavalcante, weary of the violence, had retreated from the front lines. The old order was crumbling, and a new breed of gangster was waiting in the wings. The Gallow Brothers War had weakened the DeCavalcantes, but it was the testimony of one man that would truly shake the family to its core. Ralph Guarino, a former hitman, turned informant. He broke the sacred code of silence. Omerta. He became the government's star witness. Guarino's testimony was explosive. He detailed murders, extortion schemes, labor racketeering. He exposed the inner workings of the DeCavalcante family. His words sent shockwaves through the underworld. No one was safe. Trust evaporated. Paranoia reigned. Guarino's testimony led to a series of high-profile indictments and convictions. Top members of the DeCavalcante family were sent to prison. Their grip on power significantly weakened. The family that had once seemed invincible was now vulnerable, exposed, and the feds were just getting started. The DeCavalcante family, once a tightly knit unit, was torn apart by suspicion and paranoia. Informants were everywhere, whispering secrets to the feds, turning brother against brother. The once unbreakable bond of family had been shattered. The FBI, emboldened by Guarino's success, continued their relentless pursuit of the DeCavalcantes. They infiltrated their ranks, turned their associates. The family's criminal empire, built on blood and concrete, began to crumble. The DeCavalcante family's reign of terror was coming to an end. Their story a cautionary tale of the corrosive effects of power, greed and betrayal. The family that had once ruled New Jersey's underworld was now fighting for its very survival. The 1990s began with a bang for the DeCavalcante family. Not the celebratory kind. It was the sound of FBI battering rams, Operation Desert Storm, they called it, a fitting name considering the storm that was about to engulf the New Jersey mob. This wasn't just another raid, it was a full-scale assault. The feds, armed with years of intel, wiretaps and informants, were coming for the family's jugular. They hit multiple locations simultaneously. Safe houses, social clubs, even the homes of high-ranking members. The message was clear: the party's over. No more turning a blind eye, no more backroom deals. The DeCavalcantes, once considered untouchable, were now caught in the crosshairs. And the man pulling the trigger was a familiar foe, Ralph Guarino. Operation Desert Storm was just the beginning. The feds, smelling blood, launched a series of sophisticated stings. Operation Bid Rig was perhaps the most devastating. They infiltrated the family's construction rackets, posing as corrupt contractors willing to play ball. For years, the DeCavalcantes had rigged bids, extorted businesses, and controlled the flow of concrete. Now, they were unknowingly lining the pockets of the FBI. Every bribe, every threat, Every backroom deal was meticulously documented. The evidence was overwhelming. Wiretaps captured incriminating conversations. Hidden cameras recorded cash exchanges. The DeCavalcantes, blinded by greed and arrogance, had walked right into a trap of their own making. Their days of controlling the concrete jungle were over. As the trials began, the true extent of the DeCavalcantes' crimes became public knowledge. The newspapers had a field day. Headlines screamed about murder, extortion and corruption. The family's dirty laundry was aired for all to see. One by one, high-ranking members were convicted. Captains, soldiers, even those once thought untouchable. The family's hierarchy crumbled from within. Trust evaporated. Paranoia reigned. The walls were closing in and there was nowhere left to hide. The sentences were harsh. Decades in federal prison for racketeering, extortion, even murder. The message from the justice system was clear. The reign of the DeCavalcantes was over. The era of mob impunity in New Jersey had come to an end. Operation Desert Storm and its aftermath had a devastating impact on the DeCavalcante family. Their leadership was decimated, their ranks depleted, their reputation in tatters. The once feared North Jersey Mafia was a shell of its former self. The family's control over their traditional rackets dwindled. Unions, once under their thumb, broke free. Construction businesses breathed a sigh of relief. The flow of easy money dried up. Those who remained free were looking over their shoulders. The feds were relentless. Informants were everywhere. The lifeblood of the Mafia, trust and loyalty had been poisoned. The DeCavalcantes were a family broken. The downfall of the DeCavalcante family wasn't just about arrests and convictions. It marked a turning point in the public's perception of organized crime. The code of silence, omerta, which had protected the Mafia for decades, was crumbling. Informants like Ralph Guarino, once considered traitors, were now seen as heroes. Their bravery in speaking out, in breaking the cycle of violence and intimidation, helped bring down a criminal empire. The DeCavalcante story serves as a stark reminder of the seductive nature of power and the devastating consequences of organized crime. It's a story about loyalty and betrayal, about greed and its price, and ultimately, it's a story about the triumph of justice over silence. The 21st century dawned with the DeCavalcante crime family, a shadow of its former self. Operation Desert Storm and the relentless pursuit of law enforcement had taken their toll. The old guard, once seemingly invincible, was either behind bars or living under constant surveillance. Gone were the days of controlling unions, rigging construction bids, and running unchecked gambling operations. The family's grip on New Jersey had weakened considerably. The streets, once filled with fear and whispers of their name, were now patrolled by a new breed of criminal. The DeCavalcantes, like a wounded animal, retreated into the shadows. Their operations, once brazen and far-reaching, were now smaller, more localized, and shrouded in secrecy. They were no longer the undisputed kings of New Jersey's underworld. They were fighting for survival, their legacy tarnished by years of violence and betrayal. The aging bosses who had built the DeCavalcante empire on blood and concrete were fading away. Some died in prison, their sentences stretching into perpetuity. Others, released in their twilight years, were mere ghosts of their former selves, their power and influence a distant memory. Simone DeCavalcante, the quiet Don, who had once ruled the family with an iron fist, died in 1997. His death, though anticipated, marked the end of an era. The family he left behind was fractured, its future uncertain. The new generation, lacking the experience and ruthlessness of their predecessors, struggled to maintain control. The old ways, the codes of silence and unwavering loyalty, were being eroded by a new breed of gangster, more interested in quick profits than long-term stability. Despite their weakened state, the DeCavalcantes were not completely toothless. Echoes of their violent past occasionally surfaced, reminding the world that they were still a force to be reckoned with. In 2007, a series of murders rocked New Jersey's underworld. The victims, low-level associates and rivals, were brutally eliminated, their bodies left as grim messages. The killings, though never officially linked to the DeCavalcantes, bore all the hallmarks of their signature brutality. These acts of violence, though sporadic, served as a chilling reminder that the DeCavalcantes were not to be trifled with. They may have been weakened, but they were not finished. They were like a wounded animal, lashing out in desperation, clinging to the remnants of their former glory. Today, the DeCavalcante crime family exists in a state of flux. Their influence is a fraction of what it once was, their ranks depleted, their leadership fragmented, but the allure of organized crime, with its promise of power and wealth, still holds sway. The Mafia's long shadow continues to loom large over New Jersey, a reminder of a time when fear and intimidation ruled the streets. Law enforcement agencies, though vigilant, know that the fight against organized crime is far from over. The DeCavalcante story is a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most powerful empires can crumble under the weight of their own greed and violence. It's a story that continues to unfold, its ending yet to be written. The DeCavalcante family's story is ultimately a tragedy, a cautionary tale about the allure of power and the corrosive nature of greed. What began with dreams of prosperity, twisted and warped into a reign of terror that left countless lives shattered. They sought to control the American dream, only to become consumed by its dark underbelly. Their pursuit of wealth and influence came at a steep price: their humanity. The pursuit of power, built on a foundation of violence and intimidation, inevitably leads to ruin. The ironclad grip they held on New Jersey eventually slipped, their empire crumbling under the weight of their own sins. Betrayal, a constant companion in their world, ultimately brought them down. Their story serves as a stark reminder that the wages of sin are steep indeed. The DeCavalcante family's exploits, though rooted in the grim reality of organized crime, have also captivated the public imagination. Their story has been told and retold, inspiring books, documentaries, and even a critically acclaimed television series. The Sopranos, with its fictional Jersey mob family, drew heavily from the DeCavalcante's real-life history. The show's creator, David Chase, grew up in New Jersey, familiar with the whispers and legends surrounding the family. While the characters and storylines were fictionalized, the show captured the essence of their world: the violence, the loyalty, the constant tension between their criminal lives and their desire for normalcy. The DeCavalcante's story, though steeped in darkness, continues to fascinate and horrify. Their legacy, a strange blend of fact and fiction, serves as a constant reminder of the enduring power of the Mafia myth. The DeCavalcante family may be a shadow of its former self, but organized crime in various forms persists. New players emerge, seeking to carve out their own empires, exploiting the vulnerable and operating in the shadows. While the days of large, hierarchical families controlling entire industries may be fading, the allure of easy money and illicit power remains. Drug trafficking, cybercrime, and human trafficking have become the new battlegrounds for criminal enterprises. The fight against organized crime continues, a constant struggle between law enforcement and those who seek to operate outside the bounds of society. The DeCavalcante story serves as a reminder that the battle is far from over, that vigilance and a commitment to justice are essential in combating this enduring threat. Amidst the stories of mob bosses and their illicit empires, it's crucial to remember the victims, the innocent lives caught in the crossfire. the businesses extorted, the families torn apart by violence and fear. The human cost of organized crime is immeasurable. The DeCavalcante's reign of terror left behind a trail of broken lives, shattered dreams, and communities living in fear. Their story should serve as a stark reminder of the devastating impact of their actions. We must honor their memory by continuing the fight for justice, by holding those who engage in organized crime accountable for their actions, and by working to create a society where such brutality has no place. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the dark history of the DeCavalcante crime family. We hope you found this exploration of their rise and fall both informative and compelling. If you're interested in delving deeper into the lives of notorious figures in history, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories like this one. Your support allows us to continue bringing these tales to life. And don't forget to check out our Notorious clothing line, where you can find unique apparel and accessories inspired by the most intriguing figures in history. By sporting our gear, you're not just making a fashion statement, you're supporting our mission to educate and entertain. Click the link below to explore our collection.